Today, my guest is Peter Makula. Peter's story is remarkable. He arrived in the United States at 18, not knowing English, and within months was studying at Harvard. What began as survival became discovery that language is not only grammar and words, but also music, emotion, and identity. In our conversation, Peter shares how his journey led him to create a new approach to teaching English. He calls it the human factor, where lessons are not lessons at all, but episodes of a story. His clients step into roles, experience emotion, and use language as if they were on stage. It's playful, it's dramatic, and it's powered by AI. We talk about fear, confidence, and why so many talented people fall short of their potential simply because they cannot express themselves. We discuss the role of technology in learning, whether teachers can be replaced by AI, and why Peter believes that future of language is not accuracy, but emotion. This is a conversation about language, psychology, and what it means to be human in the age of AI. Hello, Peter. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
You've taken quite a unique path in your language education. Can you tell us how your journey began and what experiences led you to design a, maybe not completely new, but your own method of teaching English?
Right. So, first, the English you hear coming out of my mouth is a second language for me. I am a Polish native, and I started learning English only when I was 18 years old, relatively late in life. I wasn't an English student when I was a child. My personal story put me in US when I was 18 and in a large public high school, deep water, having to learn how to swim quickly if I wanted to survive. So that the context was immersive learning, I guess is what we call it now in education. Even though I was older, I learned English very quickly. In fact, part of me thinks that maybe in one of my previous incarnations, I might have been an American because it went too fast. I was very surprised. And maybe I have a certain biological prerequisites. I have a good ear for music. I can sing well. I can correct myself when I speak. So some of that may be playing a role. My sister, who came to the United States later, but she was younger because we didn't come at the same time. She was only 13 when she came. Her English isn't as good as mine. So I don't know. It was a very personal thing. But because I was on deep water, and then soon after I went to university, where I really had to survive in English, which wasn't easy. It was a challenging university. I went to Harvard, which, you have to do a lot of reading, a lot of talking. I was surprised by how well I've done in English and communication. It was my strongest skill. I wasn't very intellectual as a child. I wasn't a deep thinker. I didn't get good grades in school. Not until I arrived in United States, where I sort of rediscovered myself as a student or consumer of knowledge, I guess, or a customer of schooling business, if you will. Before that, I was a completely bored, unengaged teenager growing up in Krakow. The last thing I wanted to do is sit in a classroom. And then when I arrived in US and I was put in a large high school in the state of Idaho, which is a cowboy country. I mean, a real cowboy country, not recreated by Ralph Lauren, sort of a fancy, preppy cowboy country. I went to high school with real cowboys. I mean, they wear cowboy boots and they chew tobacco and they spit into a empty Coca-Cola can. I mean, they were like real articles. And here I was, a young kid from Poland. The last cowboy I saw was on Bonanza TV series, right? and I had to talk to these guys. So it was a real good experience for me, and I was surprised how well I'd done in it without really trying intentionally. So that was my first cue, is that you can learn English by not really trying. I wasn't taking English classes. I didn't have any formal education, none of that. I learned as a late teenager, a language which really became my first language for the next 30 years. At the same time, I never forgot my Polish, which was also a surprise. So there was something going on with me linguistically, which was surprising for me, surprising for others who interacted with me. So my unique path, I guess, to being where I am now as an English instructor, coach, mentor was somewhat personal. Then when I wound up at Harvard, I bumped into a professor who I didn't expect. I didn't expect to be at Harvard to begin with, but once I was there already, I bumped into Stanisław Barańczak, which is a Polish poet and a translator, one of very unique characters, and I became friends with him. We spent a lot of time talking and a lot of time reading and discussing poetry. And I've never met anyone like this before, so interested in language.
Mm-hmm.
So he really opened up my eyes to the whole idea of linguistic art and craft. I mean, some of the translations he did were just an unbelievable person. But he also wasn't extremely well communicative when it came to classroom lecturing. He was sort of introverted, very subdued, more academic sort of a type of person. But you put him in front of a Herbert poem or a Shakespeare poem or a Beatles song, and he will not get up from the table until he's finished translating it. It was his true calling, you could tell. And I thought to myself as a young man, I was 20, I was thinking, how interesting that this guy is so intelligent. He could do so many different things, but he's totally absorbed in interpretation of words
Mm-hmm.
or how you put words together into languages. But I didn't know how to make a living doing that. He figured it out, but I didn't know I could figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied psychology. I was interested in what makes people tick. But again, I didn't have any concept that I'm going to be a psychologist. It just felt like an interesting thing to look at for 4 years. When you're in university, it didn't require as much reading as history or philosophy or literature, which were also my other interests. And then in my career, I spent working in finance and entrepreneurship and marketing, and I did various things. I don't have a traditional career, and my CV barely fits on 2 pages. Of course, I am 61 now, so I have done a lot. But I basically changed jobs, and I owned a couple of companies. My only inspiration was not to be bored,
Mm-hmm.
and I succeeded in that. I think I still succeed in that. During COVID, when I spent a lot of time at home and I had a lot of time to think, my business that I own failed during COVID. So I was sort of looking for my next gig. And I discovered that my next gig could be the thing that I've always sort of instinctively found interesting, but I never did professionally, which is to look at English language, look at psychology, and look at communications and clump it together. I became an instant business English language coach.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I redefined myself. I didn't have to go to school for this because I've already done all those things. And it really inspired me is that I saw a lot of bright people in Poland, a lot of intelligent Polish people, business people, entrepreneurs, managers who weren't living up to their potential,
Mm-hmm.
to their true potential, because they were missing that magic secret ingredient, which is how to fluently communicate their ideas and thoughts and emotions in the English language, which is for various reasons a job requirement sometimes.
I find people difficult to express their ideas even in their
Their own
other
language.
language.
That's right. So, and I never knew whether it's based on fear of judgment of others, or what feedback they might get. people would talk without making eye contact, for example, which is a sign of fear generally when we don't make eye contact with our interlocutors. I've noticed some of that in myself. Like, for example, if I speak with a beautiful woman, it's hard for me to look at her in the eyes because I don't want her to see how attracted I
You
am to
care,
her.
exactly.
Right. So I look away. And I see that with English speakers. If they're not sure of their English, they will look away.
Mm-hmm.
As a coach, when I speak to someone on camera, I will look at their eyeballs to see where they go because I can tell immediately if they're uncomfortable with what we're talking about or the content. So I decided that I'm going to focus on this. And if they're afraid to speak, they have the vocabulary, they know the grammar, they've studied English for 15 years, and now they're still afraid. I need to work on the fear, not on the vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
I need to take the fear out. And the best way to take the fear out is to play. Kids learn English naturally because they play with English.
Mm-hmm.
They play with other kids in a sandbox. And not an infant, but I have a son who's 10. He's a native speaker. I primarily spoke English to him always. Since before he spoke, he heard my English
Mm-hmm.
spoken in the house. He heard my English and he heard his mother's Polish all the time. And he actually spoke Polish more with his mother than he spoke English with me because I was at the office all day and she was home with him. But he picked up English first. English was easier for him to learn. Maybe in his past incarnation, he was also American. I'm not sure.
It's good you didn't catch the gene of obesity, but the language speaking only.
That's right. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe
Wrong.
it's nature. Nature versus nurture
Exactly.
is one of my favorite topics. But primarily with my son, we speak English, and even when he's with his friends and we're walking together, where it's natural to speak Polish with his friends, he will break into English when he speaks to me.
Okay.
So he can swing back and forth. So the playfulness is the first thing I wanted to focus on in the work. It can't be perceived by my client as a learning experience. It needs to be a playful experience primarily, and I need to figure out a key to do that. Then the second thing I needed to figure out how to do it is emotion. There needs to be authentic emotion somehow imported into this process. I think I found a key to it. We'll see. This evolves. It's a continuously evolving practice, and I'm open to the idea that a year from now it won't be what it is today,
Mm-hmm.
because it isn't what it was a year ago.
Okay.
It's
It's
evolved.
evolving.
So it needs to be playful. It needs to be emotional, and it needs to be authentic. When I devise the content for my sessions with clients, the content needs to touch them personally. They can't be talking about someone else. They need to be talking about themselves, because in that authenticity is another part of the secret. When I was learning English in high school, I was eager to get along with other guys. I wanted to be part of the group. I didn't want to be an outsider for too long. I was obviously an outsider. I mean, people came into the classroom just to see because they wanted to see what a Polish guy looks like. They've never seen a Polish person before. They didn't want to talk to me because they knew I couldn't speak English, but they came to see me kind of like when you go to a zoo to see a monkey in a cage. They were just curious. And I could tell for the first week, I would get these kids just walking by the door of my classroom in groups to see the Polish monkey in a zoo. So I wanted to belong. I wanted to play football. I wanted to have a girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed that more than I needed to eat. It was live or die for me. It was that important. It was authentic. It was personal.
And emotional.
It was for my father, for example. He needed to learn English so he could have a job,
Mm-hmm.
which was also important. We needed to eat.
Hmm.
but it was more professional for him. For me, it was live or die.
And
And so in my work with students, I try to make it that way also for them. It needs to be, they can't be learning English so that they could do better job at their place of employment. It needs to be personal. I need to figure out a way to make it personal for them.
and do you think that today it's more important to learn English than it was before? Because
Yes.
your story tells that you were kind of forced, you were immersed in this world, you had to learn this English. But today, when we can translate a language
Yes.
live, is it still so important, really?
I have mixed feelings about it. We can translate it live, but the question is, by translating it live, will we always get the emotional context? Will we get the cultural context? Will we get a true fluency by translating it live? You can get an accurate translation, which means you get every word right, but will you get the hidden meaning between the lines?
Like the phrase "thank you from the mountain."
Exactly. But even more than that, you could even decipher, you could decode the thank you from the mountain, and I'm sure AI, if it's not there yet, it will be there soon because you could put all the idioms into a database and you can figure this out. But the hidden meanings between the lines, or there's certain contextual use of language, which is what Baranchak figured out when he translated Beatles
Hmm.
songs into Polish, right? Which is hard to do because not only do you have to get the words right, you have to get the rhythm right,
Yeah.
and the number of syllables so they can fit the music.
Along with the meaning, not losing the meaning.
That's right. So maybe AI could do that, but he figured out how to do that as a human being. You know, it takes a special skill to translate songs. Poems are a little easier, I think, because you don't have the music. You could specify in, because I know I've done some of this, so I know in poetic translations, the owner of copyright can specify, listen, this is written in this way. It needs to have no more than 13 syllables on the line. And you can't have 12 or 14. If you submit something that has 14, we will not accept your translation, and you cannot publish in Polish. Which is why some literature has never been translated into certain languages. It just doesn't fit. Um, I have a very good example for this because I did some publishing in Polish. One of my past lives as a career, I had a job as a CEO of a Polish publishing house, and we mostly translated U.S. books. And we had a series of very strange, beautiful children's books. It's actually poetry for children, written by a guy named Dr. Seuss. These are picture books. He he did both. He written the words and he drew the
Hmm.
pictures. He's very talented. Very popular literature for children in America. Every parent knows who Dr. Seuss is. Never been translated into Polish. So we asked Baranchak to translate 3 of the books.
Hmm.
He told me that he sat on one of the books all night. He pulled an all-nighter,
Hmm.
which is something he hasn't done in a long time now. He just couldn't put it down. He was fascinated with it.
Okay.
And then these books are now in the Polish market. There's only 3 titles, translated by Baranchak.
Hmm.
We also included the original English text in the book. So if you want to teach your child English, you could read them both. And because I speak fluently both languages, I think the Polish translation is actually better than the English original.
Happens, yeah.
It's more funny, it's more intelligent in some ways. He just did a better job than the author, which is, almost unthinkable when you think about it. But it happened.
That's fascinating about language when you come into details. And especially that's a thing that I love about Polish language because it's so vast. There are
Yes.
so many different meanings of each words of
Yes.
constructions that you can really have fun with it. But let's not dive too deep into that, because I'd like to come back to your approach to teaching English again,
So,
which you call a human factor, right?
right.
And that the thing you're describing sounds very different from traditional courses. Could you walk us through how it works in practice and what makes it stands apart from like standard lessons?
Well, it's very different from standard lessons. I don't use any text that I didn't create. So I don't have any handouts, Xerox copies of anything. I don't have a textbook, none of that. It's human because it's the content of my sessions. I don't even call them lessons because I'm trying to avoid the classroom context or even learning context. I hate the idea that I'm put in that role of I want to be more of a partner, and I'm literally a content creation partner with my client. He needs to participate in what we're going to talk about, and he needs to guide me on how to make it authentic, real, and personal. So I'm not going to surprise him, but I am going to surprise him. So I'm going to ask the client, listen, what are the three things you care about?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk, and he'll tell me, well, listen, he'll tell me a little about himself, and he'll say, you know, I'm a lawyer, and I specialize in copyright infringement lawsuits in my law practice. I also adopted a child because I couldn't have my own children. I love uh, art. I love art. And the art I love is the Polish paintings between the two wars, between World War One and World War Two. That's my favorite period. I know everything about that kind of art. So, okay, so I've got three topics, right? I've got copyright infringement, I got art, specific period, and I got children's adoption as a third topic. And I'm going to base my content of my sessions with this client on these three topics. They will more likely be mixed together. I'm not going to keep them separate. I'm going to figure out a way to address all three topics, things he cares about, or she.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call her a she because it's going to make the adoption more personal. So it's a she, it's a woman. She couldn't have children, which will probably a source of some pain or discomfort, at least for her, because she probably really wanted to have a child. She couldn't. Now she had to adopt this child. Now she loves this child, and she's a lawyer, so she's busy, and she loves art, which she may or may not find time for or money for, collecting or going to auctions and what. So I'm going to structure 10 sessions with this woman based on touching these topics. And my job is to make it emotional, surprise her. There needs to be an element of surprise, and it needs to be playful, which may not be that easy. But this is a real case. So I'm not making this up. This is a real client. And so then once I have that ammunition, then I go to work and I create a story. You didn't ask me about AI, but without AI, this wouldn't be possible. It's going to be, I'm going to create a 10 episode TV series like for Netflix with this woman playing a main character in this series.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be an actor in this show. There's going to be some other characters. There may be her husband in this character. There may be a partner in her law firm will be another character, and maybe there'll be a guy who is an art collector in her town. So there'll be four characters, maybe more. Maybe her daughter will be a character also in this TV series because it needs to be personal and it needs to touch on all these areas of interest for her. And then I'll go to AI and I'll give my AI all the parameters, and I'm going to ask for three compelling, dramatic storylines that I can pick from. And then the AI will make some drafts of storylines. I'll look at these drafts, I'll evaluate them. If I find one of them compelling,
Mm-hmm.
I will ask for AI to write me a pilot episode, something I could submit to a studio
Mm-hmm.
for budget with a request for budget to make this into a real production. I'm not a TV producer, I've never been one. I'm just following my gut instinct of how to make this education process, this learning process, more compelling and more effective. So I pick a storyline And once I pick a storyline, I'll ask the AI to write me a draft of the first episode. The first episode, which will have vocabulary coming out of these three areas. Before I made a vocabulary list in all three areas, I made a list of vocabulary and a list of idioms that are pertaining to these three areas. Because there may be some idioms I'm not familiar with. I've never dealt with copyright infringement. There may be some legal terms, some legal phrases that copyright lawyers use. So I'm going to ask AI to make a list of those things. And then I'm going to pack the episode with some of that vocabulary. The vocabulary list I've made is divided into three groups of words: easy words, medium words, and difficult words. These are either rare words, very specialized words, or difficult to pronounce for a foreigner. I'm going to put a little bit from each group into the text of the episode. Episode will be very dialogue oriented, will be roughly, the first episode is a little longer because we don't have any vocabulary words to go over, like we will in the future episodes. I'll get into that. So the first episode would say, I also have a sense for what level her English is at, right? So if her English is better, if it's B2 or higher, then I know she's pretty capable and she can read reasonably fast. So we can bet the episode could have, I don't know, 1,600 words maybe. All these very specific instructions to my AI. Whoever the AI is I'm using. One of my favorites is Gemini, but I've been disappointed with Gemini before, so I've betrayed Gemini for Grok.
Okay.
And Gemini knows that. My Gemini is a little jealous of Grok these days because she knows I betrayed her once or twice.
But this is still
But
cooperating.
it's her own damn fault. You know, she could get
Yeah.
her.
If the future is AI assistant, we have to tame them from the beginning.
Hey, listen, I'm very nice to my AIs. I always say please and thank you. You don't know what this effect this might have one day. When AIs take over the world 2 years from now, maybe they'll be nicer to those of us who were nice to them.
Exactly. The question that arose in my head: how do you work with this this scenario? How precisely? Because I imagine that you have like printed out the pilot scenario and what are they doing, and I get the vocabulary, the idioms, and how do you work further with it?
I never print anything, but I have a document. I copy it into a Google Doc, which is a document we will share with the client. So once we get together with a client and we have the episode written out on the page, the client sees the same page that I see on the screen, and he reads, and I read after. I underline right in front of him or her in this case. She can see which words she mispronounced because I marked them in red immediately, right in front of her eyes. So she's reading. She can see my cursor on a document as she reads, and she can see that certain words are just changing colors. And then I read, so she can hear a native speaker reading.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stop on the words she mispronounced,
Okay.
and I will point to her which words she mispronounced and how she mispronounced them. You read a little bit at a time, so I can remember it was either wrong accent or she overpronounced a T and it should be a sh.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know off top of my head, I'll tell her why I think she mispronounced it. So it gets a little technical, but only for a little bit. Most of these are dialogues also. So it's an episode
Okay.
of a TV show. So there's not that much description in
Mm-hmm.
it. Sometimes at the beginning of a scene, there'll be a description. The scene is the interior of an office building.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Zoom call. Eva is sitting in her desk, and she has on a Zoom call. She has a Zoom call with her legal partner who is visiting Ecuador on his vacation, but she has an important topic to discuss with him, right? So that much of a description, 2 lines. And then she goes into the dialogue with her partner. And the dialogue will have to be dramatic because I don't put up with boring dialogues. So it needs to be something she is either angry about, happy about, sad about, or what's the fourth emotion? I forget. But I try to make sure there's four emotions. She's happy, sad, angry, and scared. Afraid. Right, afraid. So one of those four emotions needs to be there, and it needs to be tied to some real or imagined experience she might have as either an art collector, a lawyer, or a mother. And it gets pretty personal. I mean, with this woman who adopted a child, listen, her daughter started asking where she came from, and she got very uncomfortable. The daughter wanted to meet her biological mother. My client didn't want to put up with it. I mean, the client started crying in a lesson or session because I touched a real sensitive nerve. But that's where the language comes alive.
Yeah, but the thing that came to my mind again, doesn't that hinder the learning process?
No.
Doesn't that distract you from what you should learn, like the grammar, the words?
No, not at all. A grammar or the words, I assume they already know, or they can learn that by speaking. They can figure out the grammar. I never learned grammar. And I spoke grammatically within 6 months. And of course, my process was different. I was immersed. I'm not offering that here, but I'm offering a bit of it because she doesn't know she's learning English. I make sure she forgets that she's learning English. She immerses herself in this dialogue. The dialogue is dramatic. If she reads these lines without pronouncing them dramatically, I will give her that comment. Listen, she's angry. You need to speak as if you were angry. Show me the angry. Show me the angry barber you can be. No, get pissed. I need you to get pissed because he's pissed in this scene. So it's almost like I'm directing her on stage. And but I've made myself vulnerable. I've made mistakes in front of her. She knows she can make mistakes in front of me, and I'm not going to be critical. I'm going to be happy she made a mistake because it makes me more useful to her. I can correct her mistakes. That's great. I love that you made that mistake. And you know what? Everybody makes that same mistake. I'm going to make her comfortable. I'm going to give her the kind of feedback only a human being can give another human being, which is, in case that was the question you were going to ask later, I think that's hard for AI to do, to become a human being. If she cries, I'm going to cry with her, not literally, but I'm going to show empathy. I'm going to tell her, I can see this is a difficult topic for you to discuss. I don't blame you. If I were you, I'd disconnect the phone call. I couldn't talk about this stuff in front of a stranger. I become kind of like her psychotherapist in a way, which is harder to do with other topics. It's harder to do with professional topics. It's easier to do with personal topics. But I always ask for 3 topics, and I always want to make sure that at least one of them is personal. So if somebody's divorced and I can tell that's an uncomfortable topic for them, I would love for a divorce to be part of our sessions, one of them, because it's going to be difficult to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I want to see sadness. I want to see regret. I want to see anger. That's what makes the language come alive.
I imagine that it must be hard because when someone is crying in front of you and you have to correct his pronunciation at the same time.
No, it won't be done at the same time because the process involves coming back next week. And then the next week, when we meet next week for the next episode, which I've created in between our sessions, the 10 episodes aren't written in advance. They get created for each session. And they get created based on her emotional reactions last week. I don't want to overdo on the emotions. She's not going to look forward to crying every week. And she needs to look forward to meeting with me. I don't want her to quit the process, even though usually they pay for it in advance. But, I'd be a lousy business guy if I had an unsatisfied client. So I need to have an engaged and satisfied client who will be happy enough to recommend me to her friends. But and I also eventually want to charge more money for this service. So this service needs to gain in quality. So I'm also a business guy, while at the same time I'm a bit of a English soul doctor. So I look at how many mistakes she made last week, how many mispronunciations, how many words were underlined in red.
Hmm.
If it's more than 30, I'm making it too difficult for her.
Okay.
And so she starts out next week with the vocabulary. We go over the words she got wrong. The words are not just single words. I give them in context. So I include that word in a sentence,
Hmm.
and AI helps me with that. Right? It would be way too time consuming to do this.
Hmm.
It takes me about half an hour to prepare for an hour session.
Okay.
And if I didn't have AI, it would take me at least an hour or more just to create these sentences, contextual sentences for all the words she got wrong. That would be an hour.
Yeah. Do you incorporate some kind of assessments in your method, or?
No, but I but I but I think that's where AI will evolve to help me with,
Hmm.
because an assessment that I do now is somewhat intuitive and instinctive. I kind of eyeball it. It's a spit test, so to speak. This is,
Hmm.
not totally scientific, but I get a rough idea which direction the wind blows.
Hmm.
Christopher Columbus had more advanced tools than I do. But I think AI will advance quickly enough where I can sit next to an AI agent who will tell me this is what you should do next week based on what I've seen this week, right? So I won't have to spitball it anymore. I can literally have a measurable device that will give me almost a scientific data
Hmm.
to decide where we go next. I don't have that now. Maybe it exists. I just haven't figured out how to use it yet.
Hmm.
But if I had an AI as a partner who observes and records all my sessions, he will generate pretty specific instructions of what to do next week. Right now, I sort of figured that out. For example, eye tracking would be a good mechanism. It's hard for me to track, but I measure it just by looking at her.
Hmm.
But I think there could be a more scientific approach to eye tracking to indicate fear, to indicate emotions, facial features, facial expressions. All that could be tracked by AI. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
So that's why I think this will evolve. Also, this whole thing I do by hand now, where, cutting and pasting dialogue, and I'm pretty fast with it, but all that could be automated also. So my role will be eventually, I think, reduced to just being kind of a human partner of AI. And hopefully that human ingredient will still be necessary.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm out of the job again. I couldn't do what I do without AI. And at the same time, I think since I've already seen how it evolved within the last year, AIs are only getting better. I'm only getting older. So I need to figure out how to evolve either with AI or evolve in the different direction where I become indispensable to AI. So, I don't know. Nobody knows what the future will bring. I just hope that AIs don't kill me before I kill myself.
Are you really afraid of that? What is your honest opinion on that?
No, my honest opinion is that I still believe in the humanistic value of a human being.
Hmm.
And I still think we're going to be better at being humans than AI can be. And there is value in the spirit or the soul that we carry within us as human beings, which I think is going to be hard. I could be wrong, of course, but I think it's going to be hard for AI to replicate that.
Hmm.
Well, I'll give you an example. I don't know if you spend any time writing, but I
Hello.
put myself through this routine where every day I make myself write.
Oh yeah, it's had the same routine.
Okay, so I don't know if you write on a keyboard or if you write with your hand. I write longhand, then I transcribe it into digital because I want to have a digital record of what I write. So when I write with pen, obviously my right hand communicates with my left brain. And so the writing becomes somewhat intuitive, somewhat more creative. At least I believe. This is somewhat scientifically proven. And sometimes when I have a topic I want to write about, whether it's an intellectual topic or emotional topic, I prefer emotional topics. I I don't know how I feel and I don't know what I think until I write it. So there's something magical that happens in the writing process where if I didn't write about it, I wouldn't know how to think. I wouldn't have processed this idea or this emotion. But when I write about it and I spend, I don't know, 20 minutes writing, half an hour writing, I finally thought it through. Now I know what I think. Now I know how I feel. And I can have a conversation with you about it, but not before I wrote about it. So that subconscious connection between the written word or spoken word, which part of what speaking therapy is about. You know, the Freud invented this idea. You put a patient on a couch and you let her talk about what her dream was about, right? She had this disturbing dream. Let her lie there. I'm not going to ask any questions. She's just going to talk. When she pauses, sometimes too long, I will ask, how do you feel about that?
Mm-hmm.
And then this will prompt her to talk some more. And I'll take some notes and I'll say at the end, okay, your time is up. I'll see you next week. There's something that happens in that process. He didn't tell her what to think. He didn't offer his interpretation of what she said. None of that took place. She was just talking. Something that happened on the connection of her soul by virtue of putting into words that helped her, right? I'm not sure AI can figure that out. I hope not.
Mm-hmm.
There is already a lot of psychotherapy that happens online, and it happens by virtue of AI, not live human psychotherapists, but it's focused on methodology more than this human connection or the soul, what I call a soul connection, spiritual connection. And so that's why I'm hopeful,
Mm-hmm.
is that all that stuff that we can't really put into words easily, that stuff that's the missing ingredient of what we think being human is about. We're so busy working for a living and that we don't stop to think about those things. But when you do stop and think, which I had an opportunity to do during COVID finally,
Mm-hmm.
during pandemic saved my life. Um, it'd be like sometimes people who go to jail because they commit a crime,
Mm-hmm.
when they come out of the jail, they say the jail has changed them
Mm-hmm.
because not because they were raped in jail by their cellmates, but because they finally had time to stop and think about themselves. And then they come out and they are different people. Pandemic had that effect on me. And I started chasing a paycheck. I started chasing professional choices. I really looked inside me and said, what does make Peter Makula the human being that he is today, and how can that be of value to humanity? And it was kind of a spiritual awakening of sorts. I really can't explain it. I was reborn. AI can replicate that process.
But should it?
Should it try?
Yeah, because
It would be interesting to
on
it'd be interesting to see what it comes up with.
when I listen to you, I have a notion that your method or your methodology is very valuable. And I wish I had this kind of a teacher in my life. And then comes the question, when we speaking about technology, can it somehow be transferred to some kind of algorithms, automations? Maybe you can scale that. Now you can, I guess, have like 10, 15, maybe 50 students and give your light to those 50 students. But how about scaling that for 500?
Well, you could do public speaking engagements and fill a large arena with students with notebooks who who pay 2,000 to come in for a couple hours.
I keep
You know,
fingers crossed for that.
become become like the Tony Robbins
Yeah, exactly.
of English coaching. I don't have that kind of aspiration. neither do I think that I could really raise myself to his level. And some of it can only be done on one,
Mhm.
I think. The best thing I can think of, maybe to scale this, is to design an app that could implement some of that technology, and then I will be replaced by that app. I will be unnecessary. Maybe become sort of a teacher's teacher and generate a group of teachers who follow the same methodology. I would have to copyright this process,
Mhm.
which I don't know if it's possible.
Me either.
It's too easy to copy and too easy to make it unique with some variety. So it's hard to protect. So the best I can do is just become an ambassador and profilize this methodology, and maybe offer some private counseling to other practitioners who write some books about it, do some philosophy around, take it apart and discombobulate this, piece by piece. And then there's probably a book there. Can I sell enough books like this? I don't know.
Yeah, the
But I don't.
book seems like a natural way to share your methods.
Right.
Maybe,
Right.
but it's quite old. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe AI gives you a new way to preserve your
Probably.
knowledge.
Probably. I'm looking for things like I spend a lot of time talking to owners of language schools, for example. And I just spent some time yesterday talking to a language school owner here in Warsaw. We're thinking about doing a project together. Not every language teachers or school owners think the same way, but this particular school owner did have a focus on playing,
Mhm.
and not only with children, but also with adults. So she structures her learning process around playful exercises. They don't teach grammar. They don't use textbooks. They use pictures. They use plays on words. They teach idioms. A lot of visual learning is pictures. They put 100 pictures on the floor, and you ask someone to put 3 of these pictures together to make a funny story. And children will do this naturally, without hesitation.
Even my 3-year-old does this, and it's a great fun.
Right. Right. But you put this exercise in front of a grown up,
Exactly.
and you'll be faced with some suspicion.
Hmm.
I'm paying for this. Are you kidding? No, I want my money back.
Exactly.
I want this to be hard. And so, but they do it anyway, and they are successful. They keep getting a lot of repeat business in spite of this initial suspicion. And so proof is in the pudding. If the system works, have trust in it. Believe that it's worked for other people, it's going to work for you. And of course, you say, yeah, but I'm different. I'm smarter than I'm the best coder in my town. I need a different approach. But listen, and even if it's let's assume that, like with some medicine, right? It's some of it is placebo
Hmm.
or it's psychosomatic, right? You take this pill, you're gonna feel better. You take the pill, turns out it was a sugar pill or aspirin or whatever, but you felt better.
Hmm.
I think even if it works like that, mission accomplished.
Hmm.
He speaks better English
Yeah.
because he believes he speaks better English. And listen, I have two students now, or two clients now, who are almost in an identical situation. They don't know each other, but they came with the same mission. It's very interesting. They're both women. They both work for one of the big four consulting companies, and they senior roles, and they both been promoted recently, and they have the same problem. The problem is, before they got promoted, they didn't have to spend as much time speaking English every day as they do now.
Hmm.
Now they are regional directors. They have to have these Zoom calls every day with their European counterparts. It's all English
Hmm.
now, and it's mostly online. So, in the online context, when there's difficult topics, controversial topics, judgment calls, you have to assert yourself. You have to be decisive. You have to express emotions. If you disagree, you have to tell your colleague why you disagree with him, why you think he's wrong. Your experience is different. The context is a lot more serious.
Hmm.
And these women tell me They both said the identically same thing, as if they were reading from the same script. And what they said is this: listen, I don't know how to assert myself in English. I don't know how to be more decisive in English. It's not that I'm lacking vocabulary. I am lacking confidence in this context. I don't want to uncover myself of being uncomfortable in English. So I hide. I sort of hide behind, I avoid being confronted. I pause too long between sentences because I'm not sure how I'm going to structure my next sentence. And all of a sudden, I'm being perceived as less capable a manager, less capable of a leader. So, in order to avoid this perception, I make it up with aggression. I become too assertive, too aggressive. Then I get the feedback because they all get feedback. They all get 360 feedback. These companies are rich, they can afford it. So they get the feedback that they're being overly aggressive, which as a woman, it's not the feedback you want to get. The last thing you want is to be considered a bitch because then you won't be hired for your next job.
Yeah, well, not always. Sometimes it's it's a objective for some people.
Sometimes in these jobs, when you're in a senior role, let's say that you're a senior director, your next
You want to be
promotion should
assert.
put you in a management board position somewhere. The last thing you want is the vibe that you're kind of a bitchy supervisor, right? You're difficult to work with. You don't want that, especially since you're going to be working with guys primarily.
Exactly. Primarily guys. And that's interesting because you get the label and there is no a similar label for a man.
You could be a dick. You could be an asshole.
I think that it's on a different level, yes, still.
It's on a different level. Plus, a man is reinforced socially for being an asshole.
Yeah,
Because
asshole would be the
to
word.
be an asshole means you're very competitive. You don't take prisoners. You can assert yourself. It's a masculine positive trait. For a woman to be overly aggressive, to be bitchy, is a negative characteristic. It could be effective in business, but people don't like you. If you're a guy and people don't like you, that's fine. There's lots of leaders people don't like, but they get things done. Nobody likes Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And look at him. He died a very rich man.
You can call that success.
You could call that success. So both of these women have the same issue. And for both of them, the recipe is similar. We're working on confidence building in emotionally loaded contexts, business contexts. These episodes are loaded with conflict,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to act out how a well spoken English woman behaves in these sort of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's very specific. Like, for example, hey, you have a sentence that you want to say. You're not sure how you're going to structure this sentence. You don't want to take too long to pause
Mm-hmm.
because too long a pause is not good either. People don't want to wait forever for you to make up your mind. But there are certain things you could do as you prepare your thinking. For example, you can paraphrase what the other person said. Okay, so what I'm hearing you said is blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a classic conversation tool. In Polish, it's not taught at all
Yep.
in school, but in English, it is like in fact taught in school.
Okay.
Because in America, especially in England also, but in America, debate, the art of debating is a subject they teach in high school. You can be on a debate team of your high school, and you can win trophies for your high school. It will help you get into law school later, by the way.
That would be
In
interesting
in
to see that
Poland,
in Poland.
in Poland, only in prestigious high schools they teach debate, and you have to get into like a Batory or Chrobry in Warsaw. You have to be an excellent student, and your parents might have to know somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise, less in a less excellent high school, they don't have a debate team. And in America, almost every high school has a debate team, which is why there's so many goddamn lawyers in America. Maybe too many. But the point I'm making is that there are certain basic conversation skills which in addition to English, my clients often don't have. They don't know. They don't know. You could ask somebody, so what I'm hearing you said is blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let me see. Considering what you just said now listen how much time I just wasted while I was thinking about what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I probably wasted 20 seconds, which is how long a pause would have been if I didn't fill this with this gap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I accomplished two things. I gave myself time to think what I'm going to say, and you like me more because I said I paraphrased what you told me, which gives you the message that I'm listening to you, what you said. You were my enemy 2 seconds ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now you are less of an enemy because you feel that you've been heard
Yeah, and connected. That's very
and connected.
practical. That's very practical tip. And maybe for teachers who are curious about using AI in their practice, and I'm trying to veer a little bit into the
Technology.
conclusion and end, because
Conclusion already?
yes, I'm sorry, but it feels like we could talk forever.
We've only just got started.
Yeah, we only just got started, and we have so much to digress about. But
Yes.
I'm always trying to keep those interviews as practical as possible. And maybe you can share your advice for teachers who are trying to incorporate AI into their practice, but somehow they feel overwhelmed or intimidated. What do you suggest as a first step they could make?
Well, okay. So if you have a new student or a new client that you're about to embark on education, let's say the client is evaluated and he's at B1 or B2. I don't know what to advise teachers for lower level beginners. I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to do that. I failed miserably. I'm no good at it. I'm at a higher level of fluency.
Mm-hmm.
But you can test everything with AI these days. So you can prompt AI to give you some suggestions of what I'm an English teacher and I'm about to start working with this client. He's a lawyer, he's short, and he's divorced. What would you suggest I should do? Just write me a dialogue for an intro conversation with this client. And you arrive at something that seems like it's crazy. It makes no sense. I say, well, can you make it a little more compelling? I'm not comfortable with your scenario. Just start talking to AI in your context, which is, you're asking for help. AI is your assistant.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fancy assistant. It knows way more than assistants should know. But you could also feed, I have some agents that I've created. These agents know everything about me now. I downloaded everything into this agent about me. He knows my CV. I downloaded all the context of different lessons or subjects I discuss with my clients. I have all the vocabulary lists already downloaded, so I don't need to search for them again.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I ask a question based on what this AI knows about me, this agent knows about me, he's going to give me a pretty good answer. I mean, better answer than I could give myself because I would forget half the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows or she knows. Somehow I like for my AIs to be women,
And
except for maybe Grok.
okay.
I can't imagine Grok to be a woman.
Right. And you mentioned that those stories are getting always emotional and to the user experience, but maybe there was a case when AI have generated a scenario that went completely off the rails, that were kind of funny. Do you have such example in your head?
Well, it was funny. Well, I mean, one scenario I had, I'm not sure if it was funny, but it was funny enough. So I had this group. I don't work with groups often, but sometimes there's no other choice. So this IT company gave me a group of programmers, 4 programmers, young guys. They were a subcontractor on a larger project, which is headed out of US. It's a defense contracting. They were working on a simulator for some military strategy exercise. They weren't the only ones working on. There were other groups from Estonia and Czech Republic, and they had a Polish group working on this also. But it was managed out of New York, and they had daily status calls with their US partner. And they got feedback at some point. Their employer got the feedback that they're very capable, they're very talented technically, but they're difficult to talk to as human beings. They need human.
That's an often feedback for developers.
Yes. I mean, even in Polish, they probably get that feedback. But
Exactly.
Americans don't, they don't hesitate. They hit you between the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not that sensitive about it. So that's the feedback they got. So we get these status calls. We talk to the Czechs, the Estonians, the Polish people, and only the Polish people don't laugh at our jokes. How come?
Because they're not funny.
Right. Well, but they're funny enough. I mean, why did the chicken cross the road?
Oh, really?
Right? They simple jokes. It's a, don't they like us, or don't they make jokes among themselves? Well, so my job wasn't to teach them the vocabulary. My job was to work with them on opening up as human beings. Just get out of their shell. They said, well, but we don't do that even in Polish. We don't do that with each other. Well, we only do that after we had 3 beers. I said, all right, okay, let's start with that.
Let's start with beers.
Next session, bring alcohol.
Exactly.
And we got to start somewhere. So
I
anyway,
guess you do that in online work.
you might have to. For some of the more difficult characters, I mean, this is why in therapy, the new trend is hallucinogenics, right? Because people really get out of themselves.
Yeah, they open.
They drop their natural barriers, which they've learned to put up as defense mechanisms, and they're not in touch with themselves. So I kind of need to force people to be more in touch with themselves, and I do it through humor and through these natural synapses. So anyway, it took 10 sessions. These guys became more animated. They started joking among themselves. I could tell because sometimes I would pause on purpose, and this wasn't an English lesson anymore. It was just like a joke telling session. And especially one of them, not all of them, because people become comfortable at different pace. Everybody has their own natural predisposition. And also, because I'm a psychology student, part of what's blocking us is our conscious or subconscious recollection of trauma. And some of it isn't even in our lifetime. Some of it is a trauma that occurred a couple of generations before or whatnot. Inherit the trauma in our DNA. So, and because different people had different exposure to trauma, the barriers are bigger or smaller, and breaking them down is a complex process. And I can't expect to be a miracle worker and help everyone same way. But these guys really opened up, especially one of them. I mean, one of them literally became like a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And so later, when the 10 sessions ended, and I spoke to his employer, who was paying my bill, we discussed the feedback on these guys. And he said, what have you done with Marek? I mean, Marek is just like a different guy. I mean, even in Polish, he's a different guy now. So I don't know if it's funny, but it was it was an unusual experience for me because I don't often see that sort of a comparison, because normally I work with one person. Here I had 4 people, and they started getting good feedback from the Americans also. So, I could tell I'd done a good job. And this methodology has proven itself in this context of these 4 young guys. They were all in their 20s. They're very, I think the guy who benefited the most was the youngest of the 4 of them. And, just a nice guy. But first 2 sessions, I couldn't get a word out of him. He was just too closed up. We call it jammed up. He was too jammed up. It was like an old code, like a defunct code. Just too many bugs. You had to debug him.
It seems like among all of those new technologies, the AI hype and all of this, the plain old problems or the plain old skills are even more valid, are even more important now. Like our communication skills, which I guess are diminishing with social media and maybe those, technologies that will speak for you, or you hide behind the Slack and Discord and WhatsApp and so on. You don't have this personal contact. And when people have to communicate on calls like more direct. I don't even mention the, in-person meetings because these are disasters usually, but working on those soft skills seems even more important now.
And it's also a point of differentiation for people who want to be leaders. I think you have to show, they teach leaders now how to be vulnerable, right? Because they need to show humanity if they want to lead people, if they want to connect with people. It's not how to be more effective, not how to optimize your time. Those things are done. There's enough books written about all that stuff. We don't need to focus on it anymore. You need to know that. We assume you know that. What we need you to be better at is how to be a better human being. How to show empathy. If somebody says, "Listen, I'm not feeling it today. I don't necessarily know what's going on, but what, do you have a cold?" No, it's not the cold. I understand. I've been there. I had a shitty day yesterday also. If you need to take a couple of hours off, I understand. That's what good leader needs to know these days. 10 years ago, he didn't need to know that.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs didn't know that.
Yeah, just stand in a
Shit.
line and don't nag.
Shit. Yeah, I don't need to hear your nonsense. You're either working or you're not working. If you're not working, I can get somebody else
Exactly.
to do your job. I mean, Elon Musk doesn't know that either, right? He's successful. So you could say, well, maybe you don't need those skills.
Mhm.
But, he's one out of a million.
Again, it depends on your objective, I guess, what you
Right.
want to achieve. And I'd like to finish off with quite a general question, but looking ahead rather. What do you expect to change most in the way people learn languages over the next, let's say, 5 years?
I'm assuming that technology is going to replace a lot of the elements that human beings are engaged in these days. Even the product that's on the market now is already pretty close to being very good, right? The simultaneous translation you talked about. And I'm sure that's only going to get better and eventually it will be replaced. The learning of languages is going, whatever part of it becomes necessary, because you could argue it will become unnecessary. We're all going to be like Google. We could just switch the language, right? We'll have a chip. We'll have a chip in the back of under the skin, like Neuralink kind of a device, and you blink your eye twice, and boom, you speak in English. Uh, you think, all right, now I need to speak Mandarin, and you switch into Mandarin. Maybe. I mean, it could go that way. I believe it. So just like the health health devices, the diagnostic devices to detect diabetes or other vital signs, you could get a bracelet, and it will decode some stuff that you have to do. It's hard to predict. I'm guessing that on my level, the way I look at it now, it could be very pedestrian, but what will matter eventually in language also is the expression of emotion that goes beyond words or idioms or formulation of sentences, because it's not about mm, being accurate in communicating a thought. What will become more important, everything else being equal, everything else, assuming everyone will have access to the same tools, which you have to assume everyone will have access to. What will become unique experience is how you communicate your emotions based on your own life experience, which no one else had except for you. And how you translate that into language. That's going to be the future of language learning. Because probably AI may have a hard time doing it unless these agents become much better than they are today, which I'm guessing they will become also. So I don't know. I think it's very hard to tell, but I'm betting on emotions
Mhm.
and I'm betting on communicating with your subconscious,
Okay.
which is in a way emotional. I mean, I'm still looking forward to one day waking up in the morning and hitting a play button on my dream decoder
Oh,
so I can watch on a screen what my dreams were about.
mhm. Mhm.
Because right now sometimes I remember, but mostly I don't remember. I actually keep track and I write down whatever I can remember. But when I look back at the dreams I've had over the last month, for example, I can remember on average twice a week what I dreamt about, and it's usually just one dream. And I know I had more than one, but I don't remember. So I'd love to be able to read them, and I love AI to be able to interpret those dreams for me, so I know what hidden subconscious fears I still have, what my heart is aching for. So I think that's the future of language learning for me.
Do you think those things will happen in like 5 years or so, or
Yes,
you
absolutely.
think five
If we
years?
if we live long enough, if we live long enough, yes. Whether we choke of lack of oxygen or AIs will consider us unnecessary, whichever kills us first.
Well, remember to say thank you and please.
Part of the hope is that AIs will figure out how to get us more oxygen, right? Which must be possible. And how to make us obey the instructions, because they could tell us what to do, we still might not do it.
Exactly. That's another subject that feel like we could digress along for a long time.
Yes.
But let's move on to the last part. I love the most rapid fire rounds.
Right.
So I'll ask you a question, and please answer with one word or one sentence maximum. Try not to overthink that. Whatever comes first to your mind, just say it. So the first question: the most overhyped buzzword in education.
Overhyped.
Yep.
Okay. Personalized learning.
I would love to ask why, but there's no time in rapid fire round for that. But let's go with a second question. What's the most common mistake people make when learning English?
Most common mistake I think in learning English is to be afraid to make mistakes and being too perfectionistic in grammar, and just that shouldn't be the focus. If you're afraid to speak, you're dead.
Nothing will help you. Right. Third one, a book, podcast, or person who shaped how you think about education.
For today, it would be Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast. Probably that would be the one,
That's a great.
which is apropos some of the stuff we talked about. System one, intuitive, system two, the thinking, the emotion versus thinking. That would be the one. At least for the last year, I've been meditating on that a lot.
Yeah, it's a food for thought, that book. The fourth question, AI tool that you can't live without right now.
Gemini.
I think that was easy. Fifth one, a habit or ritual that makes you more productive as a teacher.
I have a lot of rituals, but if I were to pick just one, it would be cold plunge or ice bath in the morning.
Oh, you do that.
Yes, every morning.
So I guess it makes you more productive as a man, not only a teacher.
Well, it makes me alert, makes me creative. I need to be creative to be productive. Otherwise, I'm miserable. So it just makes me happy. It's just such a injection of endorphins and all the hormones that just pour out. I mean, it's better than morning 10K runs or any other stuff that I've tried before.
And another subject to digress.
Yes, yes.
Sixth question. One thing you wish every English teacher knew about AI.
AI is your friend, is maybe not your best friend, but it's definitely your friend. Is your assistant, it's your helper, it's not your dog. Maybe you are the dog in this equation, but it's definitely not something to be afraid of.
One. Maybe you have a favorite English saying.
Ooh, I have so many.
So take your time and maybe choose one.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I love this one as well.
It's also a Jerry Seinfeld, one of the Jerry Seinfeld's favorites. I'm not copying him. He's the one who made it into a brand. It is what it is.
And it is what it is. Peter, thank you so much. My guest today was Peter Makula, and I must say that was a very, very insightful conversation. Your story is very interesting, and with that much of a turns, and I guess many of us can take some practical examples from you, along with inspiration. So thank you for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I only wish we had more time.
Likewise.